listening to America First Radio. Here is your host, Paul Adams.
Okay, so we're back, and today we're going to be discussing the connection between Donald Trump, 9/11, and Israel. See, what if Mr. Trump investigates 9/11 and Israel is implicated? Now, we know that neocons will be implicated, but what if Israel is the tail that wags the dog? What if, along with the Saudis, we discover there were a number of so-called allies, like Israel, who contributed to the 9/11 horrific attack? What happens then? And that is why I pray for Mr. Trump's safety, because, you know, a lot of people don't want to be discovered. See, Israel wants what? Israel wants expansion. The Zionist bloc wants a greater Israel. What are we talking about? Where would the borders end up? Well, if you look at the boundary lines which God gave to Moses in Deuteronomy, a greater Israel would see Israel's borders go from Beirut straight across to Baghdad, then south along the Euphrates to Kuwait and the Persian Gulf, then west across Saudi Arabia, all the way across to the Nile, close to the Egyptian-Sudan border, then up the Nile to the Mediterranean, and back up the coast to Beirut. There will be no Palestine. Jordan, forget it. Which is why Israel won't recognize Palestine. It's counterproductive, antithetical to its long-term goals. Now, I'll be very, very frank here with everyone. When Donald Trump first announced his candidacy, I was not sold he was for real, okay? I had a nagging feeling, maybe, he was just running to bolster the Trump brand. He was just going through the motions to capitalize on the free exposure in a race that he couldn't possibly win. And I was wrong, okay? I admitted I was wrong. When I heard him say in an interview that he was going to investigate 9/11, I knew it. I made a 180 on the spot.
And Donald Trump says, quote, elect me and you'll find out who really knocked down the Twin Towers. He's saying, elect me and I will expose 9/11. They may go ahead and kill him. I mean, you need to pray for Donald Trump right now, folks. And by the way, we need your prayers.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747, or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel.
In all fairness, we went after Iraq. They did not knock down the World Trade Center, okay? It wasn't the Iraqis that knocked down the World Trade Center. We went after Iraq. We decimated the country. Iran's taken over, okay. But it wasn't the Iraqis. You will find out who really knocked down the World Trade Center because they have papers in there that are very secret. You may find it's the Saudis, okay? But you will find out. But it wasn't Iraq.
Now, he leaves it vague. That's why he's such a genius.
And also, recently, they just tore down the Trump Place sign on that luxurious building in Manhattan. So, Trump Place is no more. This was done in protest. The residents protested. Go figure, okay? They don't want to be associated with a Trump brand. So the brand argument may not be holding up. We also know what happened when Macy's dropped Mr. Trump's lines. So when I heard in an interview that he was going to reopen 9/11, that's when the lights went on. That's when I knew he was for real. He was putting his life on the line. Because a lot of 9/11 witnesses have been silenced, folks, okay? They are no longer. Now, I'm convinced 9/11 points not only to Saudi Arabia, but also to Israel and some other countries. And obviously our U.S. cohorts. See, there were dancing Israelis, there were dancing Palestinians. It's a very, very sticky issue. The company in charge of security for the World Trade Center was Securicom. Marvin Bush was one of its directors. They shut down the power at the World Trade Center for a couple of weeks before 9/11, and there was bizarre construction noises that were reported going on for days on end. What were they doing? Good question. So it's not so much that the evidence points to the neocons who wrote PNAC, Project for the New American Century. That's a minor wrinkle. The issue is that it would point to Israel. Now, a lot of people don't want to believe 9/11 was an inside job. You have your rights, you know. But since we are on the topic of 9/11, I want you to listen to William Rodriguez, the caretaker with a master key on 9/11 that saved a lot of people's lives. I wish Mr. Trump would listen to this because Rosie O'Donnell is interviewing William Rodriguez. Look, I don't care what you think of Rosie. I'm a unifier. I think Trump should reach out to Rosie and it would make headlines. Trump and Rosie are on the same page when it comes to 9/11. I really think so. I really think so. They can disagree on many issues, but they are on the same page when it comes to 9/11. By the way, William Rodriguez was decorated with several awards for his heroism right after. They paraded him on Capitol Hill. You know, the Bush administration celebrated William, his heroic actions. They showered him with praise, laud, and honor until he started sharing his personal story. And his story, folks, did not add up with the official story. The establishment quickly made a 180 on William. They dropped him like a hot potato. And yet the guy had no agenda. He was just reporting what happened. He was just a caretaker doing his job. So here's the interview.
This is my friend Willie Rodriguez.
Hey, hi guys.
Hi everybody. It's 9/11, a very hard day for America, and especially hard for you. You were the janitor. You cleaned the stairways, 110 floors.
Yes.
Your office, sub-basement level 1. There are 6 sub-levels. So the lobby, then sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, sub 5, subs. You were at sub 1. You punched in at 8:30 in the morning. You were late. You weren't going to go to work. It was a beautiful day. You were going to take off.
Correct.
You come into work because your boss asked you to. You came in. You were a little bit late. At 8:46, you heard an explosion from beneath you.
From below.
From below.
Yeah.
It was so big that it lifted you up.
Everybody in the office.
14 people.
14 people.
Lifted you up.
Correct.
A few seconds later, you heard another explosion.
coming all the way from the top of the building.
Turned out that was the plane.
That was the plane.
The first plane.
Mm-hmm.
But there was definitely an explosion before the first plane.
Oh, 100% sure.
You have a lot of witnesses who were down there who would confirm that fact.
Yes.
You told that fact to the 9/11 Commission?
Not only did I tell the fact to the 9/11 Commission, but I gave them a list of the eyewitnesses that were there that experienced the same event as I did, and they were never called to testify.
And was your testimony included in the 9/11 report?
No, it doesn't show anywhere.
It doesn't
Actually,
show
it was omitted. There's 576 pages on that book, and you won't find my name anywhere.
Anywhere. You go all over the world and you speak about what happened to you on that day, the fact that you had one of 5 pass keys that allowed you access to any and all doors in the complex?
That is correct, and I have a speech that I do all over the world as a motivation speech, but it always tells the real story of what happened on 9/11. And, like I said, there's a lot of respect all over the world for this kind of story, but when I come here, I am able to tell the story, but it's always either edited or presented in a different way. And only, I guess, C-SPAN had the only pants to actually put my story without editing for basically almost 2 hours.
For 2 hours?
For 2 hours, they let me tell my story. The only media network that allowed me full coverage.
I remember there was one interview that you were doing where you said, I heard a boom, and then they cut the footage.
That was ABC News. You can see it on Google.
Right, so what you said was, I heard an explosion from below. But as soon as you said explosion, they cut the tape and they made it into the plane.
In the plane, yes.
Yeah. You're not a conspiracy theorist, are you?
I don't.
You're a survivor.
I'm a survivor. I was there. I experienced the event. I was affected, and I'm still affected. It's 7 years. I'm still have open wounds, emotional open wounds. I have to go through this depression, argumentation and debate constantly with politicians fighting for victims' rights. It's just, I'm an activist, but at the same time, I'm a person that was affected by the worst event that we have ever experienced here in the United States. And I tell you, it's just not easy. It doesn't get any easier.
And you and the rest of the survivors, what you're calling for is a new and thorough investigation where all of the witnesses and survivors will be interviewed and it all will be included. Now, there's a man who you met on September 11th, Felipe David.
Felipe David.
He was on sub-level 2, beneath you, in his office, which is a small closet-sized office.
Right.
His job was to refill the vending machines. And you met him that day in 9/11 because
he was totally burned.
He was burned.
He was totally burned.
He was beneath you.
He was beneath me, yeah.
No one on your level was burned?
No.
But he was beneath you in level 2. He was completely burned from the waist up.
And there was other people as well that got stuck on the floor below us because of that explosion. They went into an elevator to protect themselves because of the fire and the debris and all the things happening at the same time.
So there was no fire on your level, sub 1, but there was fire, sub level 2.
There was no fire on the area where I was. I don't know if there was fire on the opposite side, but not on the area that I was. No, definitely no fire.
So Felipe came up to your level?
Came up to the level, came by the by the area of the office itself, with the hands extended, all the skin hanging, 33% of his body burnt, pieces missing from his face.
And you helped him out? You got him into an ambulance? You then went back in?
Correct.
You went back in 3 times?
Correct.
You're credited with saving over 100 people's lives?
Something like that.
Yes. You yourself were the last man out? You dove underneath the fire truck as the debris fell?
Correct.
And somehow you were able to get out?
I came out, I brought a person on a wheelchair named Ed Baye, and when I put him on the lobby with the 3 other firemen, I was told to get the ambulance ready. When I went to get the ambulance ready, the building started to collapse, and the only thing I saw was a fire truck. I sleep right under the fire truck, and the building collapsed right on top of me. I was the only one that survived at that moment because all that group of firemen and the man on the wheelchair died at that moment. I'm the last person to exit the building, last man out of the building.
So here we are 7 years later, 9/11, a horrible day in American history, and Willie Rodriguez, a hero, a friend of mine, there you go. He just wants to tell his story, and I don't know, 60 Minutes, 2020, NBC News, Dateline, somebody, tell this guy's story, because all I got is a blog. Peace out, everybody. September 11th.
Now, you can think whatever you like, okay? You can believe the official story that some Arabs with box cutters hijacked some planes, you know, when these guys couldn't even fly a Cessna. You can believe that cell phone calls were made at 30,000 feet. The service cuts off at 8,000 feet, for those of you who are interested. You know, and the airphones, not all calls were made by airphones, you know. The caller IDs showed cell phone numbers, okay? And then, you want to believe that planes hit the Pentagon and also a field in Pennsylvania, leaving no plane parts, okay? You want to believe that? Believe it. You want to believe the World Trade Center number 7 came down on its own footprint as a result of fires, you know? That happens all the time to buildings, right? They catch fire and then they fall on their footprint. It happens all the time. Oh yeah, sure, right. No plane even hit that building. So yeah, you can believe whatever you want. Don't call me a nut. Don't call me a conspiracy theorist when all I want is a new 9/11 investigation. You understand? Capiche? All right. Now, if you don't want a new investigation because you don't want the evidence to indict certain people, certain nations, certain secret societies, then all the more reason for a new investigation. You know, you definitely have something to hide there, Chuck. Mr. Trump, you were voted in by the American people, by the majority of the American people. And in the months ahead, you got to realize that God is in control. Either way, do the right thing, let the chips fall where they may, because no weapon formed against you will prevail. It will boomerang on the heads of those who formed it. Take that to the bank. But please, please eradicate this satanic Pizzagate thing, okay? And let's get it over with. And if it means toppling down the too big to fail government because everybody's implicated, if it means toppling down the banks and the Fed, okay, good. Let's start from scratch if we have to. It'll be a little bit of short-term pain, and it will be a lot better than the long-term pain. That's all for now, folks. God bless Donald Trump, God bless America, and God bless Israel.